Hello everyone, this week I'm doing something a little bit different, and I've actually taken a bunch of reference photos and videos of my hometown, and I'm going to end up using this as the basis for some painting and some ideas. If you're wondering, you're looking at the Riverfront here in Louisiana, Missouri, right here on the Mississippi River. The river itself is one of the longest river systems in the world. Quite deep, quite muddy, and here it's approximately about a mile across, and we've got a lovely view of the rippling waves. This is something that I really strive to try to recreate in some of my paint schemes, and it's quite difficult, so this kind of reference video, especially with the movement, seeing how fast the water is moving, is extremely helpful. While we're here at the riverfront, let's take a look at some of the stone and concrete that's right next to the water. You can see it's a combination of browns and grays. We've got small plants growing up, kind of striving to survive here, and a lot of driftwood. So a lot of neutral colors and what have you here. Notice how dark the wood is from being in the water, and that kind of brown dingy look over the limestone and concrete we see here. Dried wood, concrete, and limestone rocks litter the riverfront here in Louisiana. So take a stroll along a small scrub in this kind of sandy kind of dirt and soil, along with a bunch of random pieces of driftwood brought in by the summer and springtime flooding, which gathers up around the docking area at the south part. You can even see an old parking barrier here, kind of buried in there. But check out the wood and how the water flows around it. A lot of this wood has been in water for some time, causing it to be quite dark, and things that are out of the water seem to be sun bleached to an extent. Wood seems to turn a number of different grays, browns, and deep greens, especially when it's in such muddy water. Nearby, we see some really interesting rust as well, and this is worth checking out. These are some really cool examples of how real-world environments affect the way things rust. Next, we're going to visit the Gates of Peace Cemetery on the western end of Louisiana, and this small Jewish cemetery has been around for 150 years. It's been recently renovated in the past decade, and there are a number of spots along the gate and fence that I want to take a look at for both corrosion and paint chipping. You can see rust has overtaken a number of spots here. There is a bit of road tar kicked up, and you can see all sorts of different bits of corrosion here, peeling, chipping paint. You can tell that the gate's been painted more than once, as there are multiple layers of chipping. Here's a really good example of that chipped paint up close as it's flaking off. It's pretty cool. We're getting a lot of deep reds and browns, along with our neutral grays and blacks from the gate itself. Closer to town, we take a look at Stark Cabin, which is an excellent example of an old cabin, but we also have awesome pond scum and reflection effects here. Smith Bar Manor, an old building turned senior home turned abandoned building, is a great example of some of the architecture you see around Louisiana. Lots of stonework, lots of brickwork, and kind of an austere facing that's a little bit imposing. Some things are a little bit newer in the town of Louisiana, and one of them is Raintree Mall. This strip mall has existed for some time and was kind of a childhood staple of mine, containing a video rental store. There's some awesome photographs. Here's the old bridge that was just recently demolished and rebuilt. And here's a nice look down the hallway. This is still an active strip mall, though during the day it's usually a little bit more quiet. At night, the restaurants and the bar inside of it pick up. The old ice house down by the river. There are a number of old brick industrial buildings, and some of them have, well, burned down or fallen down. This one in particular just recently burned down this year, and this is the aftermath being cleaned up as we speak. Here's a photo taken during the fire, and you can actually see part of the building collapsing, which is kind of crazy. This building is well over 100 years old and served along the riverfront as a place to drop off ice and pick up ice. It's a great example of brickwork again, but we can also see some of the signs of fire and how that affects a building like this. Shattered glass, smoked glass, burnt wood, burnt bricks, lots of dust from the collapse, bits of ash and scorch marks along various pieces of the building. The R.R. Rowley School Annex was originally a high school and then a middle school, so it was closed in the late 90s. I attended it when it closed, and it has fallen into disrepair, so you can see a way an abandoned building has slowly decayed over the past 20 years and has been somewhat overgrown as well. Good examples of overgrowth, stonework, metal that's been painted multiple times, and just general disrepair here. Riverview Cemetery is probably one of my favorite parts of Louisiana. This little cemetery was established around the time of the U.S. Civil War and contains gravestones over 170 years old. On top of that, it's built on a cliffside above the river, and offers a fantastic view of both the cemetery and the town, as well as the Mississippi River. You'll notice quite a bit of disrepair on some of these older stones. There's lichens, mosses, chipping. Not everything is decayed. However, some of the stonework is well maintained, including this Union soldier statue in the middle of the cemetery. Let's take a closer look at some of these stones. Time and weather and various organic bits have kind of taken their toll on these stones. Fortunately, some of them have been vandalized and repaired. And you'll notice that there's a lot of limestone, a lot of marble, a lot of granite. Limestone that appears in the cemetery is most likely quarried nearby. There's a lot of limestone in the area. And you can see how some of these older stones have gathered quite a bit of moss and lichen on them. And this is a great example of how we get different colors in some more of these neutral kind of scenarios. This obelisk is yet another great example of how lichen can kind of crawl up the side and really kind of enhance the look of stone, not necessarily overtake it. Painting something similar to this, I'd love to bring in some ochres, some yellows and browns on top of these kind of neutral grays and whites. And you can see how some of the lettering and etching has even been worn down. Meanwhile, here's another shot of the river. Good example of some rusted metal as well, some swaying trees, and an awesome bird. Before we wrap up, we obviously have to stop by the Bear Barn just to take a quick look. Nice and black and white here, and obviously a little bit disrepaired paint-wise. Additionally, here is Allen T. Lynn Welding Supply, and there is some great examples of rust and corrosion at this recycling center. So now I go to Canva, and I'm going to punch the river into Canva, and it's going to tell me what colors I have. Looks like I have Venus, Rangitoto, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Hemlock, and Mondo. And based off that, I've done a little bit of color matching using Encyclopediya. So here we have 4 different colors that we're going to bring into this palette. Reaper, Rainy Gray, Citadel, Dryad Bark, Citadel Steel Legion Drab, and Vallejo US Field Drab. Now what's my plan with this? Well, I'm going to grab those colors, and I'm going to start making a marine. It's going to be a Louisiana, Missouri themed marine, based right on the river. So, look forward to that video coming in the future. And until then, have a great week, stay painting.